Welcome to the Red and Bold Show. We're excited to have you here to talk a little 49ers football. I'm your host, Marc Adams. You can find me at 49ers Camelot. Joined by my co-host, Anthony Robertson. You can find him wherever you watch or listen at 49ers Cutback. How's it going, Ant?
It's going well and enjoying a good weekend. I think that's always a good way to go. But yeah, having a lot of fun. And I think this is kind of the time of the year where you have 49ers conversations that are very interesting. But we know that there's some things coming up. And so I'm excited to get into this conversation with you. I always enjoy our episodes every single week.
Yeah, we're going to talk some undrafted rookie free agents that the 49ers have signed. Before we do that, I want to get into just a few things that have happened throughout this week since we were last on. And I want to start with the last pick of the 49ers draft, Junior Burgeon, the wide receiver / punt returner out of Montana. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So I wanted to get in with him and I want to get your thoughts, because the more I've thought about this, the more I've come to the conclusion that it was kind of a wasted pick, because I don't think this guy has any chance of making the roster. And here's why. The wide receiver room is pretty large right now. I don't think that Junior Burgeon is going to make the team as a wide receiver. So he's going to have to make it as a punt returner. Kyle Shanahan even said as much. But here's my concern. I'm going to take you back to the first 4 years of the 2000s. So 2000 to 2004, there was a punt returner for the University of Oklahoma, the Sooners, named Antonio Perkins. Do you ever remember hearing about him?
Yeah.
So Antonio Perkins, just as a quick aside, he wore number 28. And my very first OU game that I was at, I'm sitting in the stands, and the offense is coming on the field, and I see this number 28 coming onto the field, which was Antonio Perkins' number, and the fans just start going crazy. And I'm thinking, first off, why are they cheering Antonio Perkins, the defensive back who's a punt returner, coming onto the field? And number two, why in the world is Antonio Perkins coming on with the offense? And so my buddy, who knew the team a lot better than I did, I said, why are they waiting? Or why are they so excited about Antonio Perkins, and why is he coming on offense? And he goes, that's not Antonio Perkins. That's their new freshman running back. And I said, oh, and he goes, yeah, kid by the name of Adrian Peterson. They think he's going to be great. Well, he was, and he was great that day. His very first game in college football, and Adrian Peterson was great right out of the gate. But that's just a little side note, kind of an interesting story showing my stupidity. But here's the thing. When Antonio Perkins was at Oklahoma, he returned 8 punts for touchdowns as a collegiate athlete at Oklahoma. He tied, when he did that, he tied Wes Welker. He tied Ted Ginn Jr. So both of those guys went on to do pretty well in the NFL. Antonio Perkins did not go on to do very well in the NFL. The guy who had more punt returns for a touchdown than Wes Welker, Ted Ginn, and Antonio Perkins, do you know who that was?
I do not.
That was a guy named Dante Pettis. Maybe you've heard of him. Very talented punt returner in college. Did not work out as a punt returner in the NFL. Now, Ted Ginn did. Wes Welker was pretty good as a punt returner. The reason that I bring this up is because Junior Burgeon tied Welker, Ginn, and Antonio Perkins as the second on the list of all-time punt returners. So unless he becomes this great punt and kick returner for the 49ers, I don't see him making the roster. Tell me that I'm wrong, because I really hope that he can make it.
I think it's going to be tough. Just listening to what Kyle Shanahan has said in the past about specialist is you have to be able to contribute at another position. And I know that they've invested, in different years in guys that can help return. I do think that they're looking at this as a possibility to help on kickoff return. So I know why they're doing it, because your kicks are already going to take you to the 35. So they're thinking, hey, less teams are going to want to set you up at the 35-yard line. They're going to try to actually make you return kicks this year. So with that being said, they're going to invest in a possible kick returner. The problem is when you look at the way the 49ers roster is going to shake out, is there a spot for Junior Bergman? I think that is one of the interesting notes. Now, he was very good at Montana, very good as a returner. So if he could replicate that for the 49ers, it could make for some interesting situations that, even if he gets the ball out to the 40 or 45, your chances of scoring go up immensely. Mm-hmm. So I understand the thought process. Here's the only question. Why didn't you just sign him as an undrafted free agent? Unless you believed he was going to go somewhere else. So I think it's going to be very difficult for him to make this 49ers roster. I think it's more likely that he ends up on the 49ers practice squad. And if something happens to Jacob Cowling, then you could bring him up to handle that role. But right now, what's he going to add to the offense? I think that's a bigger question. I see people in chat that were talking about Richie James. I've heard that comparison. I've heard comparisons to Ray McLeod because he does have some running back that he played in his past. So you got the running back / receiver type player. So maybe he could add some of those dynamics. But Kyle Shanahan at his presser didn't seem very convinced that he was we're going to throw him in with the wide receivers. I don't know. I think when I watched some of his film, and I haven't done a deep dive yet, I'm waiting to get into my dive for that on Patreon, is I see a player that has some talent, that has some ability, especially in the open field. But right now, I don't see anything that's going to contribute to this team beyond special teams. And I just don't know if he's going to be able to make the team. I'm with you as far as I don't understand it unless they were afraid they were going to miss him. But I do see the potential avenue they're looking at. This has got to be a Brant Boyer special, right? I mean, we do want our special teams coach to go get his guys. If this works out, we're all looking at Brant Boyer like you're a genius. And if we get a guy that's going to be a Ted Ginn, a Dante Hall, like somebody that changes the game, it's huge. If not, I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, there were some other guys we could have got. But that's one of the interesting things about the draft is just seeing how these guys play out. But a specialist only, I don't know. I think it's a little frustrating.
Yeah, Hugh Wilkins is in the chat. He said, hard to justify a 53-man roster spot for a return guy unless he is incredible. 4.5 speed does not make you think he will be. And that's kind of where I'm at. Ted Ginn had elite speed. Wes Welker did not, but he was shifty enough that he could still do well at it. So it is going to be interesting to see. But that was kind of my takeaway, is that Junior Bergman is not going to make the roster, but we'll see. Bergen, I said it wrong. Next thing that I had on here, since we last talked, George Kittle was extended. Very excited about that. Is Fred Warner or Brock Purdy going to be next?
I think it's going to be Brock. I think that when you look at how the pillars of this organization figured out. Last year, they took care of Christian McCaffrey. They took care of Trent Williams. They know what the end of their contracts are going to look like. Now George Kittle. Now it's got to be Brock Purdy. You have $50 million or close to $50 million in salary cap space. You have the money if you want to front load. You could potentially structure this to backload. But I think that this is the next domino that needs to fall. And once they get the overall total, the structure, they can kind of finish out this roster for the season, but also start planning for next year. What other contracts can they work out? Because they still need to work out a contract potentially, and this might scare some people, for a guy like Colton McKivitz. I think that they want to extend Colton McKivitz, and I think getting it done sooner rather than later and not allowing this guy to go out and have a really good season. It was a good season last year. Not bad. It was good. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one thing. If he duplicates that, there's a Jalen Moore type contract out there for him in free agency. So I think there's some moves like that they need to get done, that they want to get comfortable with. A lot of interior offensive linemen they got to make decisions on. And so I think that Brock Purdy's the next one to get done. And then hopefully before training camp, Fred Warner as well. But Brock, then Fred.
I agree on McKivitz. He's getting better, and I don't worry about him quite as much as I used to. That being said, I agree that a Jalen Moore or better contract awaits him next offseason, which makes me wonder if he's going to be harder to extend than he might have been a year ago. But we'll see. I mean, is a guy like Colton McKivitz going to say, nope, I'm going to get more as a free agent? Or is he going to go, hey, this could be my opportunity? I don't know, but I think I think that you could be onto something there. I would like to see that. The 49ers this week did sign a swing tackle, DJ Humphries, who's been with the Chiefs. He hasn't been very good. And I'm curious about your thoughts on this, because this isn't the kind of guy that the fan base wanted, but at the same time, he is a guy with experience, a guy who's played in some big games. So what did you think about this signing?
Yeah, I actually really liked it. I thought that this was a very solid move. I think there were so many questions coming out of the draft, and I think the 49ers wanted to pick up a offensive tackle that could be the swing tackle in the draft, and it just never worked out. They kind of got sniped. The offensive lineman went in gaps where the 49ers weren't picking, and they had a full expectation of picking 11 times. So they didn't want to lose picks to go up and get someone. So they did the next best thing. They waited, and then in free agency, they got DJ Humphries. And the reason I like it is because this guy's had over 100 career starts in the NFL. He's played right tackle. He's played left tackle. So he's already equipped to do both. Then also you throw in there that in 2021, he was a Pro Bowler. He had a very good season for the Arizona Cardinals. That means the 49ers prepared against him extensively. They understand what his strengths and weaknesses are playing within the division. Yes, over last year, it wasn't great in Kansas City, but that's because he was coming off an ACL that happened the year before, week 17, with the Arizona Cardinals. So they let him move on. They cut him that March, and then he goes to Kansas City late in the year, and his hamstring was bothering him. Well, you're not going to be a very good offensive lineman with a hamstring injury, but we all know when you have an ACL problem like that, the hamstring and some of those muscles around can give in. So he's finally going to be healthy for the first time in a couple of years. He is 31 years old. He's not crazy old. He's still got a lot of talent left. And I think as a swing tackle, this is a great potential player that's just got the ability to do both. I feel more comfortable now with the offensive line room getting DJ Humphries than I did going into the draft. And so I think that that's good news. They fixed a little bit of a problem here. And now we don't have to count on a guy like Spencer Burford or a guy like Austin Pleasance to get it done. We have a proven commodity with 100-plus starts, which is great news for the 49ers team.
Yeah, in getting him after the draft, he doesn't count toward the compensatory formula, so that's a positive thing as well. All right, let's jump into the undrafted free agent rookie signings. It was interesting to see that they didn't pay much for this group, and so the only guy that they really paid money to is the first one we're going to talk about, linebacker Stone Blanton from Mississippi State. He's the only undrafted free agent that the 49ers gave guaranteed money. So are Jed and Parag going cheap on the undrafted free agents as well, like they did back a couple of months ago, less than a couple of months ago with the regular free agents. What do you think about Stone Blanton, and what do you think about the 49ers must like him to give him guaranteed money, but what do you think about Jed and Parag or the 49ers in general? I blame them, but who knows? I kind of going cheap on the undrafted rookie free agents.
Yeah, I think we've seen the 49ers spend on undrafted free agency in the past. And I think that you look at a player like Evan Anderson, they gave him a lot of money last year to be an undrafted free agent, and that one worked out. So some of the guys they signed as undrafted free agents last year did end up on either the 53-man roster or the practice squad, and that makes it worth it because when you pay him on the practice squad, at least that money, that bonus money, is not just dead money. I think with players like Cody Schrader, right, they move on to another team, you miss out on it. I think that they were looking at this strategically, and I'm not trying to defend Jed York's potential cheapness, only spending $92,000 in undrafted free agency, but you want to make sure you're only going to give that bonus money to guys you think are going to make your roster or have a chance to make your roster. If not, you're just throwing money away. So I think they were a little bit more strategic with how they handled undrafted free agency. And I think part of that's because they still plan on adding players in free agency. We talked about DJ Humphries already. They also added Ross Dwelly. So that's some money they spent on some veterans instead of spending money on undrafted free agents. I think when you look at Stone Blanton, he's an interesting guy. 6'2", 230. He's a big individual. He moves pretty quickly. I think there's some things that he does well. He's not hyper athletic like a guy like Nick Martin or D. Winters. He's more kind of built in the Tatum Bethune type mold, a bigger, physical, better run stopper than he is in coverage, but has really good instincts. I like when the 49ers do this, where they go ahead and they get guys who are hyper athletic at a position and they use their skill set that way. But then they also get guys that do it because of football IQ and guys who have good instincts. So you kind of get a full repertoire of different guys. And I think that's what Stone Blanton is. So this is an interesting one for me, the way that they handled undrafted free agency. I thought there was a ton of undrafted free agents that were available that were really good players. And the 49ers didn't go that direction. My only thought is they didn't believe those guys could make the roster, and they didn't want to spend a lot of money on those guys. We'll see if that pays off. But yeah, Stone Blanton is a pretty solid player, and I'm curious to see what he looks like when we get out at camp. Can he cover? That's going to be the key. How good is he in coverage? That's going to be his way to make this team. If he can prove he can do it a little bit.
Interesting. One of the players that they signed that some are high on is running back Corey Kiner from Cincinnati. Forced more missed tackles in college football than anyone not named Ashton Genty. Second only to Genty in elusive rating. Heard somebody, I think it was Larry Krueger, say that he believes that he's going to be better than Jordan James. That would certainly follow with, where they've taken, Trey Sermon, but Elijah Mitchell is the one who was the better of the two, or who was the Ty Davis Price, but he didn't last, and then he got released, I think today, by the Eagles. So who knows what his career is going to look like. Could that happen again? Is it possible that Corey Kiner ends up better than James?
There's always a possibility. And I think Corey Kiner's a solid player. I had him as a draftable player. So when you look at, where he ended up coming out as an undrafted free agent, I think he could have easily been drafted. Him and Jordan James, when it comes to body structure, build, style, are very similar. So these guys are almost redundant in the way that they're built. The only difference is Kiner's a couple inches shorter, but their weight is very similar. They kind of have the similar games. They're not very good when it comes to catching the football. I think they're improving, and I think both of them will be capable of being solid receivers. I think Jordan James is probably a better route runner right now, but he had 18 drops in his career. So I think that Corey Kiner, it was funny because when I was live on day 3, somebody straight up said in chat, hey, go get Corey Kiner. Are we going to sign Corey Kiner's undrafted free agent? They were spot on that we did go get Corey Kiner. And I did say at the moment, I thought that was a great pick. You're talking balance. You're talking contact balance, good strength. And I like these two guys because they're guys who move the chains 3, 5 yards. They get hit at 3, they fall forward for 5. I do think they're similar. I don't know if there's room for both of them on this roster. But I would love to have both of them. I think that they're solid players who are going to be good NFL players. And I thought Corey Kiner was nice insurance in case you need another guy. What happens if Isaac Guerendo gets hurt? Or what happens if Jordan James gets hurt? Then you have Kiner to kind of step into that role. And so I did think that this was a really good pick. And I think the 49ers are going to like him, the style that he plays. So solid player, needs to get better at pass protection. But I think that's pretty much all rookie running backs at this point need to get better at pass protection. Guerendo was supposed to be tremendous. Then he struggled a little bit last year. So I did like the pick. I did like the pickup of Corey Kiner, though.
I'm going to get to West Coast offense's question here in just a minute. First, I want to go on to the next signing that we're going to discuss. Offensive lineman Drew Moss of Colorado, a 90.5 PFF grade. He had a 92.5 run block grade, a 98.8% pass block efficiency, 4-year starter, played right guard and right tackle. What do you think of this one? Heard Larry Krueger say that he was pretty high on Drew Moss as well. So curious what you think about this one.
I'm a little less high on Drew Moss than I think that I've heard kind of around. I think that when you're bringing in a guy in the interior offensive line like this, I think they're going to take a shot at him and see what he can do. But there is so much depth within the 49ers current roster on the interior offensive line that I think Drew Moss is going to struggle. And there's a couple of reasons why. I don't think he's a complete prospect. There's some things he's got to work on. Right now, I think he plays way too high. He's got to get his pad level low if he's going to be able to consistently play on the inside. He does have the necessary arm length to be able to play guard. And the question is, could he move into center? The problem is you already have a lot of guys there too. When you start looking at the depth of the 49ers offensive line, it's going to be tough for an undrafted free agent just to make this team. So even though I'm not against the prospect, I think it's interesting to bring him in, see what he can do, potentially stash him on the practice squad, because next year you are going to have free agents in, Ben Barch and Nick Zakel and Spencer Burford. So you are going to have a influx of new talent next year. That's why Connor Kobe made a lot of sense as far as a draft pick, because you are going to have some guys who are not on this roster next year. But I don't think I see an avenue for Moss to be able to make this team, especially this year. I think his best hope is practice squad. And I think this was something people got really excited about Braden Mays last year as well. And I think Braden Mays was a better prospect than Drew Moss, in my opinion, and he couldn't crack the code and get on the roster. So I like this one because I want to see what he does, but I have zero expectations for him cracking the 53-man roster. And I think even then it's a borderline practice squad spot.
Yeah. I want to get to Joe's question here. Love the videos, guys. Any word on any other possible O-line signings? I haven't heard any. Have you heard, or is there any that you think might come?
I haven't heard anything. I think the DJ Humphreys one is the final one. I think that they are pretty comfortable, as much as, people aren't really happy with, Jake Brendel or Colton McKivitz or the question marks at left guard. I think the 49ers feel a lot more confident about their offensive line than pretty much anybody else does. So I don't think another one's coming, minus, now I will say this minus, because Kyle Shanahan mentioned this in the presser. After cuts happen, there's a chance that they could address offensive line if somebody that they really like gets cut. So I think that's one way that the 49ers could address offensive line, but not before then.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that could happen. So I want to segue here to West Coast offense's question. Do you think Cowing's days are numbered? First, and this is a segue because we're about to talk about a wide receiver. First, I don't think right out of the gate his days are going to be numbered. He barely played last year. So I think that he's going to have plenty of opportunities to show what he can do. I don't know that, when you think about Jordan Watkins, who was their 6th pick, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss, I don't really know. Maybe he can knock off Cowing. I don't know what you think about that, but I don't think that he's at risk of losing his spot on the team anytime soon.
I don't either. I think right now we didn't get to see a lot from Jacob Cowing last year because he just couldn't figure it out. I think the blocking was a real problem, and then I think that he was struggling to pick up Kyle Shanahan's offense, but I don't think that is exclusive to Jacob Cowing. There's been lots of rookies that have come in that have struggled with Kyle Shanahan's offense, and that is one of the things that Watkins said when he was at his presser with the media, was that they told him how tough this offense was going to be to pick up, and it might be a struggle for him to get on the field. So I think Jacob Cowing is going to be more confident in this offense. He's been working out with Brock Purdy, with Ricky Pearsall. He's going to be more in tune with this offense and what's expected of him. And also the 49ers and Leonard Hankerson and Kyle Shanahan are going to have a better understanding of his skill set and how to use it. So I think as long as he can line up correctly and block a little bit better, he's got to figure out how to be a shield out there and just get his body in the way, because he's not really built for a dominant blocking style. I think he's going to be able to add something to this team, especially early in the season where you're possibly going to be without Brandon Ayuk and without Demarcus Robinson. They're going to need to count on Jacob Cowing, and he still has 4.3 elite speed that can get vertical. And I think there's opportunities to put him in the slot. There's some opportunities to get him in some situations where defenders cannot get their hands on him, and then he can go make some things happen. So he's still exciting. I think that right now training camp is going to be big for him to see how he's developed in a couple of areas. And if he has developed right, Jacob Cowing is going to be a solid player for the 49ers.
Yeah, I think Filthy Casual asked the question, do you think Cowing might lose his punt return duties to Burgeon? The new special teams coach likes Burgeon. That is something that's going to be worked out in training camp, in preseason. It's not going to be something that's going to be worked out anytime soon, however. Again, I question if Burgeon and his 4.5 speed is going to be much of a threat as a punt return. Now, if he's more Wes Welker-like, just has a feel for it where speed isn't hindering him, then maybe so. If he does take Cowing's spot as a punt returner, then I think maybe Cowing's days could be numbered. But I don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon. If I was going to bet on it now, I would say that Cowing week 1 will be the punt returner. I don't know that for sure, but that's just my gut. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
no, I think you're correct. And let's be honest, the only way Junior Burgeon is going to make this football team is to beat Jacob Cowing as punt returner and to be the kick returner that they're choosing. Like, that's his avenue to make this roster. And so I love it. Let's bring in competition for Jacob Cowing. He needs to get better. Last year he wasn't really pushed. Ronnie Bell was not pushing him as possible punt returner. The best pure receiver of a punt on this football team is Ricky Pearsall, and he was out for a long time because of different reasons. And so I think Junior Burgeon pushing Jacob Cowing is a good thing because we need the best version of Cowing that we can get. So I'm excited to see what he can do. A lot of promise last year, didn't really deliver on that. So I'm excited to see what he can do now that he's going to have a full off season to prepare.
Yeah, and so that leads us to the next undrafted free agent, and I teased this one last week, saying that there was one that I was really excited about, and that's wide receiver Isaiah Nayer from Nebraska. The reason that I'm intrigued by him is that he's 6'4", 220, ran a 4.4. He's an athletic freak, but the only thing is he hasn't really produced like an athletic freak. Scott McCloughan told Matt Barrows that he would have drafted Nayer in the 7th round instead of Burgeon. So what do you think about Isaiah Nayer? I realize that he's probably not going to make the team out of camp, but man, I'd love to see this guy be somebody that they could at least stash and keep him for the long haul because his ceiling is high.
I think what's interesting is I love Scott McCloughan, but what was the point of that comment? Who cares, right? You got both of them. All right. So, right. I mean, who cares if you took him in the 7th round or you didn't? But with that being said, Isaiah Nayer, when you're talking about athletic freaks, I love that kind of pickup, whether that's in the 7th round or in undrafted free agency, because now you're taking a dart throw. You've got elite skills, elite height, elite, potential. And this is kind of the Tariq Owens thing, right? You get a guy that's a big body that hasn't really had a lot of time to produce, and Tariq Owens was a way different than Nayer. But Nayer, a lot of the reason we haven't seen production from him was opportunity. I mean, he was good at Wyoming. Then he goes to Texas and he suffers an ACL. He never did anything in Texas, and his first chance to do it again is at Nebraska. So I think you've got a player here that's got an elite wingspan, the height, the weight, the vertical to be a threat. The question mark is, can he put it together in the NFL? I think that's one of the things I'm curious. But I love this for the fact that why not? Why not get an athletic freak that you can bring in there and see what he could do? So I was a fan of this signing. I want to see how he matches up against some of the 49ers cornerbacks. What happens if you get him against a Upton Stout or a Deommodore Lenoir and he towers over these guys? I kind of like having a big physical receiver out there. And I'm curious what he does with these 50-50 balls down the field. If he can show up and show out at training camp and make those 50-50 catches, he will have a shot to be at the bottom part of this roster. The question is he going to beat out a guy like Isaiah Hodgins? Is he going to beat out one of those guys that's going to handle that Chris Conley role? They still need somebody that could be that Chris Conley physical help on special teams role. And it's going to come down to probably Hodgins, Tariq Owens, and Nair. I would say Hodgins has probably got the most inside track on it, but I'm curious to see what Nair can do. And he might be somebody they end up putting on the practice squad and trying to develop a little bit more. But overall, why not? Take the shot, get the guy, and I kind of like that they brought him in. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah, and I'm still intrigued to see what Tariq Owens can do if he gets a shot. Next guy is cornerback Jacob Robinson of BYU. He had multiple offers that he turned down from the Dolphins, the Lions, and the Ravens because he wanted to join the 49ers. I heard that some timed him in the 4.3s. Then I saw the Invader 49er in the chat put Jacob Robinson can beat out Darrell Luter Jr. That would be interesting. I mean, Luter Jr. has not really done much of anything, so maybe that's not any great feat. But what did you think about Jacob Robinson?
Yeah, I liked him a lot. 11 career interceptions in college, and once he got to BYU, he really came on. And it was 3 interceptions this year, 1, then 4. He just finds his way around the football. The question marks for him were kind of some of the ones we had about other potential 49er prospects that they met with. A guy like Kobe Bryant, for instance, out of Kansas, who was undersized. He was playing about 170, 175 pounds. Now you had Jacob Robinson playing at 165. Well, during this draft process, he put on 13 pounds. So that being said, now you've got a guy closer to 180 and a little bit more physical. I think the question marks for Jacob Robinson is he going to be a nickel corner, or do they think he can play on the outside as well? If they think he could play on the outside as well, then I agree with Invader. This could be a chance for him to make this roster. I do think they got some guys they like, but this is an intriguing prospect. With guys who can find the football, the 49ers need turnovers. They value turnovers. And so I like the ball hawking ability. I think this is one of the funnest picks that the 49ers made because he does have the versatility. He's got good change of direction, pretty good feel for zone coverage. So I like Jacob Robinson pick a lot. I think this one might have some legs. And I'm curious to see where he kind of mixes it up because they did go get a couple of guys, in the process. They went and got Trey Brown in free agency. They got Trey Tomlinson, off waivers. And then they went to the draft and got Upton Stout. So they did add, but I don't think anyone that we feel like, besides Upton Stout, like, oh, man, those guys are going to absolutely go take it. So Jacob Robinson's got opportunity, and that's what he said. That's why he didn't go sign somewhere else, especially the Detroit Lions wanted him. He came to San Francisco because he knew it was opportunity to play.
Last one, defensive tackle Sebastian Valdez from Washington. Also had a lot of interest, had 12 teams looking to sign him. He's an athletic, productive interior defensive lineman. I'm intrigued by him if for nothing else, the fact that there were 12 other teams looking to sign him.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. He's a 3-tech. That's what he is. He's going to play a little over 300 pounds. This is a guy that needs some more development, but you see some of the characteristics that you need to be a steady 3-tech in the NFL. He's got pretty good hands. He's got some pretty good strength. He's just got to put it together when it comes to, a pass rush plan and being able to shed consistently. But you see a guy that's got some versatility, that's played a little bit on the outside, a little bit on the inside, and I think he grades out to be a nice 3-tech. And when you look at what the 49ers were trying to do with some of their guys they picked up, and even some of the guys they have coming in to work out, they have a defensive tackle coming in to work out, I think Hills from Wisconsin. And it's another 3-tech. It's another penetrator. So they went heavy 1-tech in the draft, and now they're getting a couple 3-techs. They want to see what they can do and who they can develop. And I think this is a player, it'll be either him or Hills, that end up on the 49ers practice squad that they can try to develop to see what they can be in the future. So I like this one, the strength, the heavy hands. I think those things play out well. I think with a little bit of coaching, he could get even better and be more of a physical penetrator and really cause some problems in the backfield. But his tape is pretty good. It's not draftable by any stretch, but I do like this pick, and I think he's a developmental piece that we'll see what happens. I still think it's going to be tough for some of these undrafted free agents, but I think there's potential here, which you always have to get when you're getting these guys that can make the roster.
Yeah, for sure. That's great stuff. So here's what's next up on the 49ers offseason schedule. next weekend, May the 9th and 10th. So that is Friday and Saturday of next weekend, is the rookie minicamp. So when we're here next week, we will be talking 49ers rookies, maybe some other things. Then you're going to have the OTAs taking place May 27th, 28th, 27th and 28th, and then May 30th, also June 2nd and 3rd, and June 5th. The mandatory minicamp, June 10th and 11th. So a lot of 49ers things coming up, which those are always fun because it's in those times of the year where there's not a lot happening. And but then when they come together to do some work on the field, we always have beat writers that are there checking things out and kind of reporting. So it gives us things to talk about. So we appreciate that. Anything else that you want to bring up before we take off here?
I think I'm just excited about, like you said, the rookie mini camps coming up. Then you have the schedule release. And I'm curious to see what the 49ers schedule looks like. We know it's going to be a fourth place schedule, but just kind of seeing, are they going to have more rest this year than they had last year? Last year was a gauntlet. Yeah. What are the gauntlets going to look like? And I think that's going to play a big role in how the 49ers play out this season. And let's see what happens with, some of the rookies that are going out to try out, a guy, the extra kicker, let's see if he can get on this team and compete with, Jake Moody. I think there's some interesting things there. So I'm excited to talk about that next week.
That is going to be interesting. What's the award that they give to the kicker in college?
Oh yeah. I can't remember what it was.
Doggone. I wrote about it just the other day, but I can't.
Lou Groza.
Yeah, that's right. So they're bringing in the 2024 winner of that. Jake Moody's the 2021 winner of that, I think. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that comes out. I love the fact that Moody's going to be pushed this year, that he's not just going to be handed the keys and everything turned over to him. He's going to have some competition. And I think that's going to be good for him because his biggest thing, I think, has been kicking under pressure. And so now he's going to be kicking under pressure from day one of the offseason program. So I think that's going to be pretty cool to see. Tell us when the schedule comes out.
May 14th is when the schedule is going to be released. I'm sure the international games will start getting released before that. They start leaking them out before that. And so I think there was a rumor the 49ers aren't going to have any international games this year, so we might not see any Niners when it comes to that. But 14th, we'll find out what their schedule looks like. And that's going to be a big day because I do think it's going to be a determining factor in maybe their difference between, a 10-win team and a 12-win team. I think it can make that kind of a difference with the travel and the back-to-backs and some of the short weeks.
Yeah. Always fun to take a look at that and see because like you said earlier, the last two seasons, I believe the 49ers had the worst rest advantage in the NFL. Hopefully with an easier schedule and better rest advantage, if that happens to come their way, we can see things differently because that does affect that affects a team's intensity. It affects injuries, those kinds of things. So that's not something to be minimalized and overlooked. But anything else before we take off?
No, that's it.
All right. Good timing because I feel like I'm losing my voice, but that's all right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Please make sure that you go to 49ers Cutback if you haven't already and subscribe. Go to 49ers Camelot if you haven't already and subscribe. We would appreciate it. It means a lot to us, helps us out. And so just have a great week and be ready next week to talk some 49ers football and a little more 49ers rookie stuff. That's fun stuff to talk about. But thanks, everybody, for joining us. Hope you have a good week.